And so lots of us hang wind chimes in our windows, on our decks, in our backyards, right? I've got one. This is mine too, but I brought it in today because we seem to be mesmerized by the wind, by the fact that the wind flowing through this little instrument is transformed into music. All right, now the wind chime, it has no idea which direction the wind's going to come from. It doesn't know how gusty it's going to be or how gentle it's going to be. It just knows that it is open to the flow of the music. It's open. It's serving as an instrument of the music. And without the wind, there will be no music. And neither will there be music if the wind chime is resistant to the wind, right? There's no music that's going to come out of that. And so there's this complete cooperation. And the wind chimes, they know that when they cooperate with the wind, they are capable of an infinite variety of music selections. As the wind is free to be the wind through them. Now, there's this wonderful mystical passage in the Gospel of John. And Jesus is comparing the Spirit of God to wind. He's talking to Nicodemus, and it's in John chapter 3, verse 8. He says, the wind, or metaphysically, the Spirit, the wind blows where it chooses, and you hear the sound of it, but you do not know where it comes from or where it goes. So it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit. And so those wind chimes are open to the movement of the Spirit flowing through them to make that beautiful sound, that beautiful music. And so we must live our lives also open and receptive to the movement of Spirit within us, because you never know when Spirit's going to speak to you. It may come when you least expect it, maybe even in the shower. That's when I get a lot of my messages. But you never know. Spirit will speak to you in unexpected moments, in unexpected ways. Tomorrow we celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. And just imagine with me, if you will, that it's August 28th, 1963, and you're one of 250,000 people gathered on the concourse of the Lincoln Memorial. And it's in Washington, D.C. It's the Civil Rights March on Washington, and Dr. Martin Luther King is speaking. Now, Coretta, his wife, writes this in her book about his life. She says, abandoning his written speech, forgetting time, he spoke from his heart, his voice soaring magnificently out over the crowd and over to all the world. It seemed to all of us there that day that his words flowed from some higher place through Martin to the weary people before him. Yea, heaven itself opened up, and we were all transformed. Isn't that beautiful? So the I have a dream speech was not planned. In fact, Bill was reading in Sports Illustrated for some reason that Dr. King handed his written speech to a security guard who still has it, and thank goodness refuses to sell it. He's keeping it for himself. But he abandoned his written speech. As Coretta said, the words seemed to flow from some higher place through Martin that day, sort of like the wind blowing through the wind chimes. And thank goodness he let it flow. Can you imagine what would have happened if he said, no, can't deviate from what I wrote? We would have missed out on just an incredible experience. And so he allowed it to flow. As Coretta said, it seemed like the heavens opened up and we were all transformed. Not necessarily by the words he spoke, but by the consciousness and the power that came from the invisible. It was truly as if the kingdom of God had come to earth. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, he talks about this as the God zone. I love that. Or the zone of God. Charles writes in his book, Jesus Christ Heals, he says, Emerson said that the utterance of true ideas by one with a mission causes kings to totter on their throne. Words of truth from a zealous man possess dynamic power to heal and bless because the spiritual man enters into him. This is why they move multitudes and are not stayed by conditions or time. And I love this. He says, when the zone of spirit from which healing words emanate is unobstructed, they feed the souls of men. I love that. So creative people know what I'm talking about. You know, writers, artists, dancers, singers, musicians, they know what I'm talking about. Because when you're in that place of God speaking through you, time stands still. You know, the heavens open up. They plug into the source of all creative ideas, and it flows. It flows. A friend of ours in Tallahassee, Florida, he was part of our music ministry. Every time he was a singer-songwriter, and every time he'd write a song, he would always say, I'm just taking dictation. I'm just taking dictation. He said, I don't get any credit. It's all God working through me. So I don't think we really grasp how powerful this presence really is. You know, we're so stuck in this 5-sense world. And if we could just abandon the physical world and really plug in to this incredible divine essence and let the Spirit of God speak through us, then we can be set afire with God's Spirit flowing in and through us. I love that. Set afire with God's Spirit flowing in and through us. And when that happens, it is divine. When God speaks through us, it takes our breath away. You know, living in the God zone takes our breath away because it's from this place that life works. Everything seems to fall into place. It works. And so how can we live more and more, our lives more and more from this place of oneness with God? Well, I want to just take a few moments here to share with you some of the personal experiences that I'm going through right now, what I'm personally going through. And for many of you, you know that on New Year's Eve, I got a call with a diagnosis of breast cancer. And the good news, if there can be good news of the bad news, is that it's what they call in situ, which is in the duct contained, small, early, stage 0. So that's the good news. But then they put you through all these tests, and an MRI showed a couple of other things they need to question. I need to go back in for some more tests. And so through the whole process, I have been, as you can imagine, in lots of prayer and meditation, and really doing some soul searching within myself. And I'm not asking the question why. That's the wrong question to ask. But the questions that I'm asking myself are, okay, what are the experiences from this? What is the life lessons that I'm to learn in this experience? How can I move through this gracefully? What am I here to learn? And I also, see this as a wake-up call. And so the other question I'm asking is, okay, what am I waking up to? But this is kind of exciting, because I know I'm waking up to something, but I'm not quite sure. So, it's strange to say. It's kind of exciting to see what is going to be revealed to me. And so I've gotten some ahas already. And so I just thought I'd share a few of them with you today, let you in on my process. And as I was in meditation, the first word that came to me that I really needed to look at was the word obligation. How many of you have ever been, and I won't ask for hands, but have you ever felt obligated to do something? Have you ever felt obligated to be a certain way? Well, this is something I certainly need to look at, obviously. It's not saying that there aren't things that you're not crazy about doing. I'm not particularly crazy about keeping my personal finances, but I'm not going to let him do it. You don't want Bill handling your checkbook. It just kind of rounds everything up. So, but I know for a person in accounting, it's like, but I'm very happy I do enter all of my stuff into Quicken when tax time comes. So I don't really feel obligated to do that. I feel like I need to do it. And so in looking at this word obligation, what I realized was it has everything to do with my attitude, how I'm feeling. And I can shift my attitude. One way I can do that is to nurture myself, to be good to myself, to be loving, and not to be hard on myself. And I know none of you have ever been hard on yourself, have you? But I'm realizing it's time to give that up. And it was interesting, and for the White Stone ceremony, what word did I get? Nurture. And then interesting. And so I see 2015 being a year where I really, truly work on nurturing. I don't even want to say work. I'm going to nurture myself this year. Not sure how that's going to look yet, but the second word that kind of came to me was regret. Have no regrets is what I kept hearing. Just have no regrets. And I've been through this before, so I'm thinking, okay, I haven't gotten it yet. Because back in 2005, I had just gotten to Unity North Atlanta as the senior minister. And I was there not even a year, like 8 months, when my mother was facing open heart surgery. And I really wanted to be with her, but I thought, I can't leave the church. I just got here. It's like a week before Thanksgiving. We're going into the Christmas season. I'm obligated to stay at the church. And so I was sitting at breakfast with my board president one morning, and she happened to ask, how's your mother doing? And I just burst into tears. And I said I really wanted to be with her before and after the surgery, because if anything were to happen, and I wasn't there before, I would regret it. And she looked me right in the eye and she said, you can't have any regrets. Go be with your mother. She added, the church will survive. We'll be okay. Again, it's that obligation. I felt obligated, And so what I learned from that is to listen to my heart, because your heart will give you the very best advice there is. And so I left that breakfast, I went home, I packed, and I was on a plane that afternoon to go be with my mother, and I was really glad I did, and she came through it fine. And you know what? The church survived without me. I came back and they were fine, But still, it's that old programming. So, obligation, let go. Listen to your heart. The third thing that I heard in my prayer meditation time was the word resentment. And Buddha likened resentment to picking up a hot burning ember with your bare hand, expecting to throw it at someone else to hurt them, while meanwhile you're the one getting burned. And so I began to, I thought, okay, resentment. And I thought, I think I've forgiven. And then I realized, there were a couple of people I was still feeling resentful towards. And I realized that I'm doing it to myself. I'm shutting myself down. I'm closing off my heart. And I thought, I'm not going to do that anymore. And so I began to really do my forgiveness work, because the goal of forgiveness is to lighten your burden. It's to make you free so that your heart can be open. And so through this whole process so far, I think I've done pretty good. I've learned, several things, about nurturing myself, about listening deeply to my heart and the guidance I receive, and also doing my forgiveness work so my heart does stay open. And so I just invite you, maybe some of that resonates with you, and you can do your work before you get any diagnosis of anything that forces you to do it. Martin Luther King Jr., on accepting the Nobel Peace Prize on December 11th, 1964, he said this. He said, "I refuse to accept the idea that the isness of man's present nature makes him morally incapable of reaching up for the oughtness that forever confronts him." You don't have to settle for what is, because there is a divine potential pulling you forward into what ought to be. So go for the oughtness that confronts you. Don't settle with the isness of who you think you are, but just go for the greatness. Go for the infinite potential and possibilities that are before you. And at the right moment and at the right time, probably when you least expect it, Spirit will make itself known to you. And when it does, when you have that experience, you will begin to understand that the ways of Spirit can only be known spiritually. And in my book of the month, The Simple Truth, I love this book. It is The Simple Truth. And it's written by Mary Alice and Richard Jaffola, their former directors of Silent Unity. The subtitle is Making Sense of God, Life, and Other Stuff. So, but in The Simple Truth, they write, maybe we should stop trying to define the indefinable. Maybe we should just stop trying to understand God and simply experience God. Just as a kite gives itself fully to the wind, never asking for an explanation or a definition of what the wind is. Let's dare to give ourselves fully to God and to allow God to take us to the very heights of our spiritual potential. I love that. Let's give ourselves fully to God and let God carry us to the heights of our spiritual potential. And so, remember the wind chimes. Instruments of music, beautiful music, non-resistant to the wind. They serve as instruments of music for the wind. And my prayer is that I can be that instrument that opens me to Spirit, that I can listen, through this process and learn all that I can learn and open and wake up to all that I can be. And so I'll keep you posted. But Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was an instrument that day, that August day in 1963, as he stood before that crowd on the Lincoln Memorial, and he abandoned his speech, and he spoke from the heart. I have a dream. Let's all abandon ourselves to Spirit, and let's dream that big dream of what we can be and what this church can be in 2015 and beyond. Let us listen to the voice of Spirit speaking and whispering through the wind. Let us come home to ourselves. Let us come home to Spirit. Let us live in the God zone. I'm going to live there, and I invite you to join me there as well. God bless you.